Hello, everybody. My name is Audrey Paula, and thank you for joining us for another week of Food as Medicine. Today, we're going to be talking about the health benefits or different benefits when it comes to a plant-based diet. We'll also talk about some of the cons when it comes to a plant-based diet, so be able to get both sides of um, the equation. But before we begin, we just want to remind everybody that Purdue University is an equal opportunity employer, that we do not discriminate on the basis of race, sex, religious creed, and if we are ADA compliant, so if any accommodations are ever needed, please do let us know. So if somebody is wanting to do a plant-based diet, it's just focusing more on the whole grains, so fruits, vegetables, whole grains, so like the wheat bread, brown rice, nuts, seeds, lentils, beans, and less focusing on animal-based products. This doesn't mean that you're completely eliminating meats or animal-based products from your diet. It essentially just entails you focusing more on the fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Remembering to always keep in mind my plates. So this just shows you the breakdown of the different large food groups and how much of it should be consumed. So fruits, again, about a fourth of our plate should be fruits. And this can be fresh, it could be canned, it could be frozen. Vegetables, similarly, about a little bit more than a quarter. The same thing, fruits, same thing in the sense of frozen, fresh, canned are all good sources of vegetables as well. Grains, making sure half our grains are at least whole grains, and we'll talk more about what whole grains mean. And then protein, although it's not, there are a lot of different types of protein, and even though you eliminate the animal-based ones, soy, nuts, and seeds are also good protein source, plant-based protein sources. And again, making sure that we always have our dairy to make sure we're getting the calcium that. So eating a lot more or focusing more on fruits and vegetables is really beneficial because fruits and veggies are naturally lower in calories, fats, sodium, added sugar, and are a lot higher in fiber. And having these different health benefits can also help to combat different diseases, like obesity, high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, stroke, different types of cancer. And so you get a lot of bang for your buck when you focus a lot on fruits and vegetables health-wise. You may have heard of the phrase eating the rainbow, and that just means that different foods that have different colors have different superpowers, which are phytonutrients. And phytonutrients are chemical compounds that are naturally found in plants. And some of these superpowers or these phytonutrients, you may have heard of them. So example could be carotenoids, and those reduce tissue damage that can lead to the formation of cancer. And some foods that have carotenoids include broccoli, cabbage, carrots, kale, oranges. There's also flavonoids, and those have anti-inflammatory properties, but they also can be anti-bacterial, fungal, and viral agents as well. Examples of food that have flavonoids include different herbs, nuts, cabbage, apples, asparagus, broccoli. And then I think the most popular one might be polyphenols. And this can help reduce your risk of different types of cancers, heart disease, and can reduce your LDL, which is the bad fat that we don't want to consume. Food sources include apples, grapes, rosemary, sunflower seeds. So again, these different superpowers can find different fruits and vegetables that have different colors. A lot of protein sources that are animal-based also are higher in fat. And so another benefit of a plant-based protein source is that you still get the protein, but you just have consumed less fat. And so that's one of the benefits is that you get the protein, but not the fats versus with this animal-based products, you get the protein, but you also get some of the fat as well. Protein does a lot for our body, especially on the cellular level, and it can help with tissue growth, help with cellular repair. It can help with diabetes, blood clotting of the vessels. It can help with weight loss, weight maintenance, muscle mass maintenance, bone health. And so protein does a lot of different things for our bodies. But proteins are made from amino acids, and so their amino acids are the building blocks. So when you connect amino acids together, that chain is essentially protein. And there are two types of amino acids. They're essential and non-essential. There are 9 essential amino acids, meaning that they are not produced by the body and have to come from the food that we eat. The other 11 are considered non-essential because our body can make them naturally. There is a debate to know how much protein we should be focusing on in terms of requirements, but the general RDA, so recommended dietary allowance, is that about 10 to 35% of our total calories should be protein. So if you are following a 2,000 calorie diet, for example, then 200 to 700 of your calories should be protein focused. And it's important to spread it out throughout the day, and that helps our body absorb the protein better. So this is a table that shows you the first half is animal-based protein sources, and the bottom half is plant-based protein sources. As you can see, the animal-based protein source usually are a lot higher in protein compared to the plant-based. But again, just keeping this in mind, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but just keep in mind if you are focusing more on plant-based, you may need to consume more to make up for less protein in that sense. So now we'll talk about plant-based protein sources. So I mentioned how at the beginning that half of our grains should be whole grain. And that is because whole grains can still contain the bran and the germ. And that is what has a lot of our nutrients. So the minerals, vitamins, iron, fiber, those are in the bran and the germ. And then refined grain usually removes those. And so refined grain does not have the nutrients that body needs. And so when you eat whole grains, you still are consuming the bran and the germ, which has all those nutrients that are really good for us. So again, that's why we say focus on half your plate half your grains should be whole grain, because whole grains still contain a lot of the nutrients that we need. Nuts, seeds, and legumes are great sources of protein. Some examples many of us are familiar with are different types of beans, like black beans, lentils, different types of nuts, almonds, peanuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, all great sources. They have a lot of different health benefits like bone development and helping with our immune system. And they also, in addition to having protein, contain other nutrients as well, like fiber, iron, potassium, magnesium, and others. There are other lots of nutrients that we didn't mention in addition to nutrients, in addition to protein. So iron, which I think all of us know, helps with blood and carrying that blood through our bodies. Oxygen, which is carried through our bodies in blood. Zinc, as I mentioned before, only show the table with the animal plant source, animal versus plant protein sources. Sorry, I cannot speak. The plant ones, you would probably need to consume more to make up for the animal, if you were to replace it, because animal protein sources have more protein compared to plant-based. And so zinc is an example. You need to consume 50% more to make up for that. So again, consuming a lot more nutrients that have zinc to make sure you're getting that amount of zinc that you would need. Calcium, vitamin D are share like brothers and sisters. You usually have one. You usually don't have one without the other. Calcium, we all know, is good for our bones, and vitamin D helps with bone absorption. And vitamin B12 can only be found in animal products. So you may need to take vitamin B12 supplements, but again, any form of supplementation you may take, you always make sure you talk to your doctor or dietitian about that before taking supplements. So what is the difference between fortified and enriched? So fortified means that the vitamins and minerals that were added to the food are not originally from that food. For example, you'll see that like plant-based milks don't actually have the vitamin D and calcium, and so a lot of them are fortified in that, meaning that it doesn't actually have it, so it's being added to that milk. Enrichment means that some of the nutrients were lost during the processing, but were then added back. So some flours, for example, you may see refined flour, you may see enriched flour, and enriched flour is some nutrients that were lost in processing were added back. So it's always better to buy enriched because enriched means there are a little more nutrients compared to refined. Now I'll talk a little bit more about meat and dairy alternatives. So plant-based alternatives are becoming a lot more popular. And if you are to replace plant-based with instead of their animal-based like milk, just remembering that it can change the flavor, the creaminess, maybe even the color. So just keeping those in mind in terms of substitution. But different varieties, there's soy milk, almond milk, cashew, hemp, oat, rice, coconut, and pea milk. Some of these are more popular than the others, but again, there are a lot of different varieties. This shows you a comparison of sugar, fat, and protein with animal milk, based milk versus plant-based. And again, you can just use that to compare and contrast the sugar, fat, and protein content of each one. Now I'll talk a little bit about meat alternatives. So plant-based meat alternatives are produced directly from plants, and this is the most common meat alternative. Then there's cell-based, that's cultivated meat. It's produced directly from cells in a certain process. And fermented, meaning that microbial, it was cultivated directly from animal cells and it's fermented. An example of fermented food could be tempeh. It could be sauerkraut. So some examples that some of us may be familiar with. This just gives you, again, kind of like a table that has the different terms discussed in the last slide. And the top one is meat, just as your main point, and the lower ones are plant-based. The one we didn't mention was a textured vegetable protein. Essentially, it's dried vegetables, but the texture of the plant-based protein resembles that of meat. So which one should you choose? Well, if you think about the cost and the health benefits, in terms of health, fiber is naturally found in plants, so there's more fiber. Plant-based meats usually are lower in fat, and they are sometimes need to be careful because sometimes they may be higher in something else. So making sure you're also reading food labels. Plant-based meats can be higher in sodium. So again, make sure you're reading the food labels. Some plant-based meats might include sugar that is not found, for example, in red meat. And then looking at the cost, pound for pound, plant-based meats are usually more expensive than traditional meat. A lot of it is to do with the market. So as it becomes more available, that will hopefully drive the cost of plant-based meat alternatives lower. Now I'll talk a little bit more about fats. Not all fats are created equal. Fats are good for us in certain amounts, and of course, depending on the type. Fat can be found in our brain. Vitamins, soluble fats exist. It's part of our hormones. They are important for fatty acids, are needed for our brain and eye development. And it can be found in different food groups or food sources. So fish, avocado, nuts, olives, those are all good sources of healthy fats. This is a comparison of the fats. We have the red color, which is saturated fat, which is the bad fat, and then the yellow and the blue are unsaturated, which is the good fat. And so this kind of compares the different fat, oils that we're used or familiar with, and it can show you the saturated fat that's in them and the unsaturated fat that's in them. I think one that people are taken back by is coconut oil. they think I think it's coconut, but it's better for you. Or coconut oil is very high in saturated fat. A rule of thumb I like to use is if it's liquid at room temperature, it is good for you. If it's solid at room temperature, it's not very good for you. Now let's talk about some of the challenges. So you're eating away from home, that can be difficult. If you're going to a restaurant, looking at the menu ahead of time can be nice to see what vegetarian or vegan options they even have. If you're going to a potluck, for example, sometimes bringing your own dish can ensure that you at least have a source of plant-based food that you can eat. Eating away like at different restaurants or different culture cuisines, like Indian food that is very focused on fruits and veggies. So again, those are all things to keep in mind. In terms of the availability of fruits and vegetables, for example, Indiana has a short growing season, and so it can be difficult to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables all year round. But again, like you mentioned before, frozen, canned are all good sources of fruits and vegetables. Making sure if it's frozen, we're not buying ones that are like marinated in sauce. And if it's canned, avoiding the ones that are high in sodium and made and the syrup, it's in syrup can. So rinsing it when you're done, when you open the can, is a good way to get rid of all that excess sodium. Of course, you mentioned costs. Plant-based can be a little more expensive, but if you're focusing on, like eating rice, if you're eating beans, those are cheap and also can be a part of your plant-based diet. So it can be a little more expensive, but it does not have to be. Just keeping in mind that sometimes the plant-based diet eating in some ways can be a trend. And so just being aware of the information that you are reading online, making sure that it is credible and it's accurate and that it is following a healthy lifestyle. Sometimes people say it's plant-based or they're vegetarian, and then they focus a lot on eating mac and cheese. And so again, making sure that if it is plant-based or vegetarian, that you're focusing on those whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. So eating any diet, whether it's vegetarian, whether it's vegan, whether it's meat focused, either way it can be healthy. It just depends, like I said, on the types of food you eat and the amounts of food that you eat. But when you are planning to eat, just figuring out which plants you want to consume, and determining what your protein source can be as well. So again, this isn't to tell you to eat plant-based diet, but just to consider and keep in mind what both either or what type of diet look like. And again, just a reminder to focus on our fruits, vary our vegetables, make at least half our grains whole, go lean with protein, and get our calcium-rich foods. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me an email or give us a call. Thank you.